Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of What's the Point, the podcast that helps you clarify and live your purpose. If you know today's guest, you know you're in for a great session. And if you don't know today's guest, here's what I'm going to tell you. Strap on that seatbelt and get ready, because this man brings the energy. Mitch Matthews, hi, welcome. Thank you for your time. It's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to get to do this, Bill. And I'm so glad you're finally doing a podcast, my man. This is meant to be. It's perfect.
Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate you being a guest. You're one of the first 5 names I put on the list of people when I do a podcast that I want to talk to. So thank you for saying yes. And for those people that don't know you, let me take just a second to give them a little bit about you, because there's so much to give. First of all, you are perhaps now best known for your podcast, the Dream, Think, Do podcast. You're the creator of that, and we'll talk about how that came to be, because it's a fabulous story. But your podcast is ranked number 1 by the Huffington Post. I think it's in the top 5% of Apple Podcast.
Yep.
Beyond being a podcaster, I know you personally to be a very effective success coach and a serial entrepreneur. And just a lifelong learner. But here's what I also know about you. I know it means most to you in this whole world, and it's faith and family.
Yep.
And you are so happy and proud and committed to being a fantastic husband and a fantastic father. And I can add one to that, a fantastic friend.
Wow.
So everybody, this is Mitch Matthews. You'll get to know him even more.
Gadzooks, could you just go around and introduce me everywhere I go? Let's just drive around a little bit. This is great.
I'd be happy to. It's easy to do when it's warranted. It's really easy to do when it's warranted. So for everyone listening, I had the privilege of meeting Mitch a couple of times, 10 or 12 years ago.
I was just going to say Chicago. 400 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems forever. I think I actually had black hair then. So we met at an event that Molly Marty had put on in Chicago. And then we met when you were a speaker here in St. Louis at an event.
Yeah.
And
I think you even offered me your couch, right? Like I
think I actually offered you. I think I actually offered you an actual bed, but
a bed. It's one of those. I'm trying to think through what the situation was. Maybe I didn't have enough money for a hotel room at the time. I don't know what it was, but I just remember, whether it was a snowstorm or what, but getting to hang out with you was such a blessing. Things were just getting started with my speaking and coaching at that time early. And you've always been just a great blessing. So this is fun to kind of do full circle and get to celebrate some of the progress, some of the things we've been learning on purpose.
Yeah, well, you've been in high gear, my friend, high gear. Yeah. So it wasn't that you didn't have money. It was just more, I've got a house and I've got a spare bedroom and it's nicer than a hotel. So that's what it was.
That's awesome.
So when I met you in Chicago at the Molly Marty event, you were there executing something that was early on in your progression of becoming speaker, podcast host, author. I forgot to mention an international best-selling author of 2 books, at least that I'm aware of, maybe more, maybe there's one in the works. But you were doing a big dream gathering.
Yep.
And I'm going to let you tell the listeners a little bit about what the Big Dream Gathering is and how it came to be, because to me, it was fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those happy accidents, Bill. Back in 2006, I was working on a different dream. It was an idea for a game that I'd gotten, and I'd been an entrepreneur for a few years at that point, but I'd never created a product. I'd always offered services, things like that. Mm-hmm. But I got this idea for a product, and I started to work on it. It was something I was passionate about. It was something my wife was on board with. And we had about 6 months of everything working great. And then in May of 2006, everything fell apart. And hopefully you've never had a month like that, but I'll never forget May of 2006. So basically what wound up happening, short version of the story, is we were working on this game. I'd been working with a person to help me develop it. And she called to say good news, bad news. And the short version of that is, the good news is she still loved the game. The bad news is her computer crashed and we lost months worth of work. We had a manufacturer that we've been working with, and all of a sudden that relationship started to fracture and crumble. And then we got hit with just a number of things all at once where we just started to run out of money really fast.
Yeah.
And, again, I never wish this on anybody, but it's amazing how when I tell that story, everybody's like, oh, I've had a May of 2006, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was sitting, I'll never forget, I was sitting in my office on a Saturday morning, and I was praying, I was thinking, I was crying, all of that, because, here I'd set out to walk out this dream, and it had literally turned into a nightmare. And I just wanted to walk. I just wanted to quit. I just wanted to give up on it. But I felt like I was supposed to stick with it a little bit longer. And as I was sitting there thinking about all of it, I realized I needed help. And whether it's because we're guys or entrepreneurs or whatever, sometimes that's just hard to admit. And it was really hard to admit, but it was so true. And I don't know that it had ever been as true as that. And I thought, okay, well, if I need to ask for help, who should I ask for help? And I started to get some ideas of some friends, creative friends, entrepreneur friends, friends that would just be willing to help. And I started to think, well, yeah, maybe I could ask them for help, but I wonder if they need help with something. And I thought maybe that would just make it easier for me to ask for help, as if I could turn around and help them in some way. So I started to get this idea of, hey, what if I invited everybody over to our house and we just wrote down some dreams and goals on sheets of paper. We put them up on our walls, and then we go around and look at each other's dreams to see if we can help each other out in some way. And this is proof positive, Bill, that I married up, because, we are out of time, out of options, and quickly running out of money. And my big solution was to throw a party, right? But my wife was like, what else are we going to do? Why not? And so I threw an email together, and, I'm not a good party planner. So on Saturday morning, I send this email out to 30 of our friends, and it's a weird idea. It's an email, and it's short notice because I'm desperate. And so I make it for this Tuesday night. And I'll never forget, in the subject line, I put Big Dream Gathering, because I thought if I put Big Dream Committee, nobody's coming to that party, right? But Big Dream Gathering, I'm like, let's just try it. And I send that out to 30 friends. And to our shock and amazement, 29 of those people showed up that following Tuesday night. And some of them, we call them extreme dreamers now. Some people came and they didn't need any explanation. They're like, just give me those pieces of paper. And they just started writing dreams down. And other people were kind of coming saying, I don't know what my dreams and goals are, but when you invited me to do this, I thought I need to know. And so that original Big Dream Gathering was supposed to go for a couple of hours. We wound up losing control of it. It went for a full week, as you well know. Our dream got back on track. A bunch of other people's dreams got back on track. But the biggest thing was people just kept saying, thanks for this. Thank you for giving us permission to dream. Thanks for inspiring and encouraging us to dream together. And something just clicked. And I will not be the person that says, and in 30 days or less, we had a mansion and 3 Lamborghinis. Like, it didn't happen like that. But we did get our product in stores by Christmas. A bunch of other people really got help with their dreams. And a number of people came and said, they walked out dreams. We had one gal that posted a dream on the wall of going to Africa and helping these orphans that she'd read about that lived in a garbage dump. And somebody that didn't know her gave her $1,000 to help her do this trip. Yeah. And, they just believed in it, and they believed in her. And she came to us and said, one, I would have never done this had we not had the opportunity to dream together. And two, this person that's given me this $1,000, they feel like they got the bigger gift, because they were able to help me with this dream. And she's like, I know they would have never done that, and we would have never connected if we'd not done something like this. So she's like, we have to do it again. And so originally, we just thought we'll do it once a year in Des Moines. And that's what we did for the first 3 years. But by that third one, we had people from 5 different states coming. And then after that, we had our first invite to come and do it in Texas. And it just kind of took off from there. And obviously, during times of COVID, getting people in a room with pencils and paper and rubbing shoulders and arms and dreaming together is not really an option. So we're working on an app currently to be able to develop that. But it's been something that really has been huge. And again, it was a happy accident based on total desperation as opposed to altruism. But sometimes those are the best ideas, or the best ways that they get sparked. So, and you and I have gotten to do a couple of big dream gatherings together now. And we did with Molly Marty in Chicago, and we did at the event in St. Louis. So you've gotten to experience it firsthand. So it's fun to
it's really powerful. And it's so amazing to watch and to be a participant also, but to step back and watch, just to see the human dynamic of, and I think you just said it, people realizing they have permission to dream.
Yeah.
And they have then encouragement to take the next step of, as you say, it's not just dream, it's dream and then think about it, but then do it.
Right.
And so to see how people help each other, and our mutual friend Bob Berg has written one of our favorite books, The Go-Giver, and very simply, there can't be any giving without receiving.
Yep.
So the fact that whole big dream gathering is a festival of giving and dreaming at the same time. So real quickly, one of the success stories from that, and this will segue, that I remember reading in your first book, Ignite, which is available on Amazon, everybody. Ignite by Mitch Matthews.
Thank you for the plug, Bill. That's awesome.
But you tell the story about two guys that got together at a big dream gathering and were able to come up with a shoe concept, and they did some business, and you couldn't name the guy. I love it. You said, I can't name the company, but if they walked by you, the shoes would make a swooshing sound.
A swooshing sound. That's exactly right. So true. And it's amazing. Those two people wound up being in our living room for that first big dream gathering. And put their dream sheets about 2 feet from each other. And what it was they weren't the same dreams, but oftentimes we find that there are dreams that are complementary. And what those two people needed was each other. And when they came together, they wound up hatching an idea which wound up kind of taking off. And that got on the radar of a large company with a swooshing sound. And within 6 months, they were working with that company. And it's, again, it's that old thing of, it does start, that person thanked me for giving them permission. And I actually corrected them to say, I created an environment, but you had to give yourself permission. Right. And that's what these two people that connected. What's interesting, Bill, you'll love this, and I don't think I even cover this in the book, but those people actually had known each other. They'd worked in the same office 13 years prior, right? So but when they put those dream sheets up, they did it at different times. So they didn't know, but they wound up connecting and wound up talking at that big dream gathering for hours. And it's one of those where, and this happens so often, that, when somebody gives themselves permission to dream, and then to give themselves permission to talk about it, to share that dream. We, I think, have difficulty, at least you're healthier than I am, Bill. So you probably don't have this
I don't know about that.
But like a lot of people have difficulty asking for help, right? Because we feel like that's something, if we don't have all the answers, we should hide that. But what we found is when people are willing to talk about their dream and be open to help, then oftentimes it's almost like they're walking around with a puzzle piece and say, where does this puzzle piece fit in? And so often, like with those two people, their puzzle pieces fit together. Even though they thought they were working from different puzzles, their puzzle pieces worked together, and what they needed was each other. But the key was both of them being open to sharing the idea, the dream, and then being open to helping each other. And I just love, we've got countless stories where that's played out. So, but that one's a particularly fun one.
Yeah, well, I'm glad those two guys decided to just do it.
Right.
Sorry.
Well played.
Another thinly veiled plug. So one of the real factors, it's not just having the permission to dream, but what you just said is perfect, because we can't make anyone do anything. We can create an environment for something to happen, and the environment you created there through your books and now through the podcast, and it's kind of a theme through Mitch Matthews' life, is you've created a safe space. You've created a space where people feel comfortable that they're not going to be judged, that they're not going to be told, you're a wacko, what are you thinking that for? And what they get in the Big Dream Gathering, what they get in the Mitch Matthews world is Great. How can that happen?
Yeah.
So great dream. Let's think about it. How can it happen? And then let's go do it. So that kind of ultimately, I know that you did a lot of tours of the Big Dream Gathering throughout college campuses. I know you had a big time sponsor so that went from your living room on a Tuesday night. And by the way, just to go back, I don't think any one of those 30 people were shocked in the least that they got just a wild idea on a whim from Mitch Matthews.
That's very true. And I would definitely say since then, there's been many more wild ideas, some of which went places and others didn't. But that's just fine. That's a part of the process, right?
What? Oh, it's Mitch. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, I guess we're going to be there on Tuesday night. Let's do it. And by the way, we're Lutherans and we made it a potluck. So I know that helped our numbers. There's no doubt. If there's a casserole, people are showing up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I want to get to the podcast in just a moment. But first, my podcast and what I talk about is helping people to take the time to look and to clarify and to own their purpose and to understand that. And our purpose evolves over time. And we have multiple purposes. We have multiple purposes.
Purposes? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's not just, here's my purpose, I'm going to do it, and then you're locked in for life. And I made the mistake of that early in my career and was miserable for a long time in a corporate job. That's a different story for a different day. But one of the things I love about your story is it goes way back to when you were a mere lad in your hometown of Des Moines, Iowa.
Right.
And most sports, I don't think were your jam, but
far from
I think you had a little excitement or a little draw to a bike shop.
Oh, for sure. And just to clarify, I grew up in this little town outside Des Moines called Newton, Iowa. And to your point, I was not an athlete by any means. I wasn't even a mathlete, right? And I had some undiagnosed health issues that would be clear. They were allergy related issues that would be, easily diagnosed in today's day and age, but at that time it wasn't. So I was kind of this weird, unhealthy kid in a lot of ways, but I did develop this just fascination and passion for bicycles. And I lived in this town called Newton, and it's still a great, great town. And it's truly one of those that if you've ever watched any of the Hallmark Christmas movies, it's kind of one of those towns, right? Like it's got a courthouse on the square, little shops all around it. And the bike shop was this hole in the wall building 2 blocks off the square. We weren't quite cool enough to be on the square yet. We got there eventually, but when I first developed this passion, it was 2 blocks off the square, and it was next to the Goodwill and around the corner from the only strip club in town. So for a 13-year-old, this was like, ground zero as far as just, it was my dream, and I loved the place. And I spent every day there I could, the year of my 13th summer, just trying to learn. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was passionate about bikes, but I was also developing this passion in entrepreneurism. And this bike shop was just all of my favorite things swirled into one. And I was kind of a weird kid and I was a little bit obsessive. So I figured out quickly that if I was not going to get hired or get fired for, get arrested for loitering, I needed to do some things to make myself useful. So I started to dust off bikes, sweep the alley behind. I mowed the lawn of the owner of the bike shop, whatever it took so they wouldn't get annoyed with me and kick me out. And at the end of that summer, the bike shop owner and his wife, Marty Doan and Sherry Doan, asked me and my parents, because I still wasn't old enough, if it would be okay if they hired me, which, I got my first dream job at 13, which is not a bad way to start life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. And then, so I think if I remember correctly, they put you into the back in the mechanic area and you started fixing bikes. No, that wasn't it, was it?
No, well, that's kind of it. You're right on track. And I do think that it totally relates to what you talk about with purpose, because what wound up happening was, here I was at the bike shop. I'd finally made it in, right? And I thought, I know what my purpose is. And I thought my purpose was going to be to work on bikes because that's what my hero did. The bike shop owner, Marty, that's what he did. And a couple of the other guys at the shop, that's what they did. And we very quickly, they put wrenches in my hand, and it was all Greek to me. It just did not make sense. It did not click. And they very quickly figured out that, oh my gosh, we are going to be legally liable for any bike that a little Mitch Matthews puts together. And that's not a good thing. And so they kind of shoved me out onto the sales floor. And what's interesting is that at first, I thought this sucks, right? Because that wasn't my dream. My dream was to go and do that, like work on bikes, put bikes together, fix bikes. And in many ways, going out to the sales floor felt like a less than. It felt like, this isn't it. But
you're banished.
Marty, but Marty in his wisdom said, hey, you're passionate about bikes. It's obvious to everybody. Just talk to people about bikes. Help them to find the right bike for them. You know everything about every bike on this floor because you're a nerd, right? Like you're excited that way. Just help people find the right bike for them. And I was like, because I kind of thought, well, I don't know how to sell. And he's like, I don't want you to sell. I just want you to do what you do and help people find the right thing. And once I could get that context, and once I started to do it, it was just like what we're doing right now. I asked people questions. I'd have conversations. I tried to figure out what they wanted to do. And then I'd get them on the right bike. And it never felt like selling, but I sold the shiznits out of those bikes, Bill. We sold a lot of bikes. And it truly, it was one of those things where I could smile, riding my bike and then eventually driving to the bike shop. Because I felt like at that early age, I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on it or call it what we're talking about, but I was on the track of walking out my purpose. And my purpose was not, in the long run to sell bikes. My purpose was to help people figure out what they want and then help them get more of that. And the first vehicle for me to do that was selling bikes.
Yeah, and I love that story because, first of all, it's I can just picture you with a wrench in your hand going, what do I do with this?
Oh, my gosh. It was obvious to everybody in about 30 seconds. Like, this is not good.
So I talk about purpose, but purpose without passion isn't going to go anywhere. And passion without purpose is wasted energy. So I talk about embracing, clarifying, living our purpose, but we have to fuel it with passion. So you had this passion for bikes, and the first thought was that your purpose would be to get back there and build them out and construct them. And so your passion didn't change, but where that passion was directed, the purpose, the function of that passion changed.
Yep.
And then it evolved from it evolved. You didn't lose your passion for bikes.
Nope.
What you found was what you just described. And I'm just reiterating what you said, Mitch. And because this is why I do this podcast. So people listening can have hopefully that aha moment that you just explained. So your passion for bikes didn't go away, but what you realized is that your passion is really helping people solve riddles and find the answers and the solutions they need.
Yep.
And that's where your passion fell into your true purpose.
Yep.
And then the third element that I talk about is persistence. And here you are, no longer little Mitchy Matthews, but still passionate and helping people.
Yeah. And I'm wildly blessed to say that, it's incredible to look back on that journey. And I would add to, I think you're keying in on those, passion, purpose, and then persistence are so key. A couple of things that salt and pepper that I would add in is giving yourself permission to experiment. Because what I find as a recovering perfectionist, what I see in myself and what I see in others, especially on these big topics of passion and purpose and persistence, is that when you throw in perfectionism, which I honestly think perfectionism is one of the biggest killers of big dreams and big ideas, as a recovering perfectionist, I know for me, one of my tendencies is to say, I have to have it all figured out before I start. Yeah. And as you well know, especially on these big topics of passion and purpose, let alone persistence, once we get there, we're not going to know, it's never going to play out exactly the way we thought.
Right.
And the only way we figure that out is to give ourselves that permission to experiment. And at 13, I wouldn't have given myself, I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on that theme and say, well, Marty, owner of the bike shop, I am experimenting currently. He's like, I was just being a nerd and being persistent and all of that. But I do see that people, when they give themselves that permission to experiment and try it in different ways, that starts to open up the chance for that purpose to evolve. And I think that that's exactly what you're talking about, is that, we have to start with an essence of the purpose and then experiment until we get clarity, and then let that continue to evolve. And I share that too, because, I worked in the bike shop, had that dream job, at 13, and I worked there through college, went to college, and then came out and did business to business sales, then got into pharmaceutical sales. And when I first got into pharmaceutical sales, that was another dream job. It was high science, high relationship. And the time that I went in, I loved it. It was awesome. But then I changed, the industry changed, and all of a sudden that dream job was no longer a dream job. It was a bad fit job. And I had to give myself that permission again to say, all right, I kind of felt like I'd lost my purpose, and that was scary. So I had to give myself that permission to do it again, to say, all right, I'm going to experiment with some things. That's when I started to explore coaching. And I didn't know if I would be able to turn it into a business, but I took a course, I took a class. I said, all right, I'm going to experiment with this. I started to coach people on the side as, just to do it, to help people, not to charge for it. And then I started to charge for it, and things like that. And it again, that same pattern helped me to then, at a different season of life, find a different iteration of that passion. And so that's how I've had to do it. I think a lot of people are a lot faster at this. I am a slow learn, Bill, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better every day.
Well, yeah. And if you want to talk about slow learner, you mentioned earlier what took me so long to start a podcast. Well, perfectionism and being a slow learner. So that gets us back to the Dream, Think, Do podcast, which I love.
Thank you.
I know you just took a brief hiatus across the holidays, and we're recording this early in the year in January of 2021. So by the time this comes on my podcast, you very well may have cranked yours back up.
Oh, sure, we will.
And which is great. But so I want to touch on what I want to do is invite everyone to check out the Dream, Think, Do podcast. Hit subscribe. Listen, you'll love it. Share it with friends and rate it 5 or preferably 6 stars.
But vote early and often, right?
Vote early, vote often. We'll stay away from voting. How's that?
Yeah, there we go. Yes, exactly.
So Mitch has now completed episode number 305. And what was really cool is episodes 302, 304, and 305 were like a little set of a continuation of 15 minutes across 4 weeks. And it was fabulous. Now, I have to digress here and say, just knowing how big a dreamer you are, when you got to episode 305, I really just thought you would probably have as your guest Mr. 305 Pitbull, and just to play off that thing. So you let me down a bit there.
We reached out. We just couldn't make it happen yet. We'll go a little later. Yeah.
So the series, this little 4 episode series, was the gift of being fully present.
Yeah.
And what I loved about those 4 things is the same thing I love about both of your books. Again, Ignite is one, and the other one is Dream Job, Realize Dream Job, Redefined.
Redefined. There we go. Yes.
And what I love about your books and your podcast is it's not just here's some stuff, it's here's some things and here's some to-do stuff.
Yeah.
So if you want to do the work, hang in here. If you don't, you might as well move on now.
Right.
And so these 4 episodes, I think, is a brilliant way to introduce people that aren't familiar with Dream, Think, Do into your podcast. So I won't spoil anything, but I do want to bring up one scenario, because I also want to be very respectful of your time. I appreciate you giving me it. You bring up something called the Christmas Carol technique, or the Christmas Carol effect. And I fully expected to hear you singing a moment later. Was glad I didn't.
I was going to say, I don't want to scare away any listeners, so we won't be doing that, Bill. I appreciate it.
So just the one spoiler alert, Christmas Carol has to do a Dickens play about the Christmas Carol. And again, I'm compromising you by giving you such a condensed time frame, but help us understand the Christmas Carol, because it also gets to another major issue that you had to face that wasn't May 2006. It was episode 300 disaster.
Right. So that series was a lot of fun to put together, because as you and I are similar in that we, get us on a passion topic, we could talk for hours. And I got the sense, especially because that was coming out, around the holidays, that each episode needed to be 15 minutes or less. And I think I stayed true to that on 3 out of the 4. I think I gave myself permission to go a little longer on the 4th. But it was all about being fully present. And what I love about podcasts, like yours, like mine, is it allows us to explore the things we need to be exploring personally. And
exactly.
And for me, with being busy and with lots of things going on, I realized, hey, I've got to be really intentional about being present, fully present. And I thought, what a better time to really try to focus in on that than the holidays. But at the same time, these rules apply, these concepts apply and are needed. February, August, whichever, pick your month. Let's go for it. So one of the things we talked about specifically is something I call the Christmas Carol method. And what it is it does play into Charles Dickens' classic tale, The Christmas Carol, which I love, and all the different versions of it. I enjoy them, most often when they're in movies. And to be able to say, all right, sometimes being in the moment is enjoying what's happening right now. And so that's a little bit of playing off the ghosts of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. And so, most people are at least familiar with it if they haven't watched some form of the movie 17 times like me. And so, what I love is about this method, we talk about what are some of those ways where you can remain fully present. But sometimes one of the ways is to actually think about the past and actually enjoy those memories. Sometimes it's engaging with the person that's with you and to engage in the past. And then we also talk specifically about the importance of looking forward in the Christmas future. We talk about something I call intentional anticipation, which is one of the most powerful tools that we can have. And intentional anticipation itself took a real hit in 2020 because we didn't know, we had all these plans and we didn't know what was actually going to happen or not. So we talked about the importance of how do you look forward to the future and do that in a way that's actually going to help you as well. So we covered a lot of ground in those 15 minutes, but I appreciate you pointing people back to that series, because it was wildly popular and really helped a lot of people, including me.
And I love that you point that out, because when I started making my guest list, my secondary thought was, who can I get that can help listeners? Because my first thought was, who can I get that'll help me?
That's right. That's exactly. It is one of the ways that we can be selfish and altruistic all at the same time. It's a great
exactly. Yeah. And I don't find anything wrong with that at all. As a matter of fact, I think that's a very wise thing to do, as I pat myself on the back for doing it. So again, everyone go listen to, subscribe, rate, review, share the Dream, Think, Do podcast. But I can't let you go until I get to one of the areas that I mentioned earlier is where your heart really is. And that's faith and family.
Yes.
Now, Melissa is a magnificent woman. I know her tangentially somewhat, but I know her through your stories, and I know her through social media. And her faith and your faith is very clear in that she is a minister at your church for the Alpha program. Your Lutheran church that you talked about, the Church of Hope.
Yep, Lutheran Church of Hope. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what a great name for a church. What a great name for anything. The anything of hope is fantastic. But I want to go a little bit further, because you have 2 boys, Alex and Ben.
Yes.
And one of your passions and one of your family's passions is movies.
Yes.
Watching movies, enjoying movies, going to the premieres, talking about them, seeing a different version, all of that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? Mitch's two sons are filmmakers.
Yep.
And what's really cool is Alex is also an author.
Yeah.
So Alex wrote a book called Waking Up Summer.
Yep.
And it's the first in what's going to be a long series of books. I bought it and gave it as a gift to my son because he likes that genre. It's a horror genre.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
He's what, 17 when he published, 18 when he published? Something.
Yeah, I think 19. I think he just turned 19 when he published the book. So absolutely, it's like 350 pages. It's a monster of a book with a lot of monsters in it, and he's just about done with his second one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so check out Alex Matthews' Waking Up Summer's book, and Ben, who also does some film work. I think he recently decided that part of his purpose was to serve his country, and he joined the National Guard, right?
That's right. He actually heads out for basic training in about a week, which is incredible. Yeah. So they are both filmmakers, and Ben likes to be behind the camera more. Alex likes to be in front of the camera more. They both write. Ben's now had a couple of screenplays that are optioned. Alex has got his first book, working on a second book. So they're crazy talented. It's amazing. And I always say, Bill, our goal was to raise them weird. And that was to have them go after things that they're passionate about, whether that's a popular thing or whether it's fully understood or not, to give them the chance to just do more of what they were put on the planet to do. So we've tried to cultivate that. And, some of those projects have gone down in fiery flames, but many of them have really, taken off and they've done some amazing things with it.
Well, that again, that goes back to the environment that you've created for countless professionals and people through Big Dream Gathering and through the Dream Think Do podcast. So I'm not surprised in the least that you created that environment at home for yourself and your family. Yeah. And it's taken me a long time to realize that if you go down in flames, it's okay.
It is, as long as you
learn something from it, right? And so I'm late to that party, but I'm finally at that party. But so that just goes to show you that, get your dream and go for it. Let your passion fly and do your best. And if it goes down in flames, ask yourself, what have I learned? And where does this passion where is it better focused? Where's the win? What's the right path? And if it's successful, hey, enjoy being a published author at age 19 with your second book ready when he's 21 now? Maybe.
Yeah, just turned 21. Yeah.
Just remind me, is Ben the oldest or the youngest?
Ben's the older and Alex is the younger. Yep.
Okay.
There's only about 16 months between them. So yeah.
Yeah,
they're pretty much twins.
I'll drop one more little tidbit from memory lane from when you stayed at my house. I knew that from talking to you and the love of your kids that Alex loved watches. Yes. And I had been given this watch that I would never have worn. And I said, well, I wasn't raised to be weird, but maybe Alex would like this watch, and apparently he really did. So he
really did. It was a yellow, bright yellow, kind of a print to it on the band. It was like one of those, like a swatch. It was so cool. And you had said specifically it was for Alex, and I'm kind of like, well, I don't have to tell Alex. I'll just wear that myself. So yes, but it became a prized possession and a great gift.
Oh, good. So that was before all the Zoom and video that we're doing now. So you could have gotten away with it because I never would have seen your wrist.
That's true. You don't know if I'm wearing pants right now. So I might be wearing that watch.
Well, the same is true. But again, there's some thoughts we should leave.
That's right. Those go. Now we'll leave that with your guests. Yeah. So sorry, listener.
Hey, Mitch Matthews, you are just everything I had hoped you would be. The energy is just, I'm jazzed. And it's 8:00 at night here. I don't know if I'll get to sleep real quick because I've got some thoughts going and some feelings going. I thank you for your time. All of the ways to get in touch with Mitch, his podcast, his books, mitchmatthews.com website, all are going to be in the show notes. I encourage you to find anything and everything that Mitch does that makes sense for you as you try to clarify your purpose and fuel your passion, because Mitch is the man to do it. Thank you so much, my friend, for your time.
Absolutely, Bill. You were an amazing interviewer, and it's an honor to be on the show. And I'm so glad. And I can't wait to come back. Hopefully, I get to come back for episode 300. So let's just put a pin in that. And
put a pin in that.
I'll plan on that. I'll hold you to it.
We'll talk about how Pitbull's coming 5 shows down the road.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Exactly right. I love it.
Love to listen to the boys, and thank you again so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.